Today, I'm Dr. Burger, and this is a presentation for PDL4805, Research Foundations in Language Education. And today, I'm going to present on writing a research proposal. So the research proposal, as you know, is then what you plan to do for your study. It is not the study itself, but what you plan to do for the study. So while you have to have your plans in place, there is also the understanding that some things may be a little different once you start with your study. So the title is one of those things. You will give a brief title for your proposal, which is a statement of about 15 words. Now, this statement or the title is provisional. It cannot change completely, but you may want to edit it at the end before you then submit your proposal. But the next section of your proposal is then the introduction or the background. And this is where you state the object of your study. In other words, what are you going to study? Already you've got your title, and it's as if you are now going to explain everything behind your title. So what is the object of your study? Why is it a problem? So if you say, for example, you are going to study reading proficiency in the primary school in grade 3, because you have to be specific. You have to explain why is this a problem. And then you will refer to your own experience and to literature. So you may, for example, say that the PRISP document indicates certain issues that must be addressed, and the PEARL's results of South Africa indicate that reading is a problem in grade 3. You have to provide references for the sources that you are using. So you cannot say, for example, that there is a big problem in grade 3 reading. You have to substantiate that. And you can do that with your own experience, saying you are a teacher and you've seen that the results in reading are, and then you quote that, and then you have to also provide from literature. You will also have to then indicate what are the consequences if this problem is not resolved. For example, children who do not learn to read efficiently at the end of grade 3 may have problems in learning grade 4, but you will also again substantiate that with reference to literature. Your context of your study, where is this going to be studied? Is it a primary school? Is it a foundation phase school? Is it in an urban setting and a rural setting? Explain the language context of your school. And again, then you will refer to what does literature say about this problem. Very important that you link your study to current literature, because you want to show that you are making a contribution to the body of knowledge that is there already. So that is then the introduction or the background of your proposal. Next, you go on to your rationale. So your rationale means then where in the background, that is exactly what you did. You created the background to the study and the context. And the rationale, you have to explain why are you doing this study. So obviously, you are going to refer to why it is important. It is an important study because it's going to add to the solution of the problem. It's going to add to the body of knowledge. So you will explain why it is important. You will explain why have you chosen this research. And there you will refer to what you have noticed about the problem. Why is it a problem? And you will also then explain why is it important? And how it will address gaps in literature about the topic. So your rationale is the reasons why you have chosen your study. And again, you will, with all that you are explaining, you will have to back it up with references to literature, references to your experience in the field. Then the statement of the problem. The statement of the problem is now a question. So you state the main research problem in one sentence as a question. Where your title is a statement, it's not a question. The problem is a question. You will use your title to formulate the main research question, and then you will formulate 3 sub-research questions. So your main question may be, why do learners in grade 3 struggle to read in their mother tongue? and then you will formulate 3 sub-research questions. Why do children in a school where there are many languages spoken, for example, struggle with reading? Why do grade 3s who are repeating the grade struggle with reading? So your sub-questions are supporting the main research question. But as you know, you will have one main research question, but it cannot contain your entire study. So your sub-research questions are like subdivisions of the main question. Then you will state your aims and objectives. So your aim will be, you are going to see which reading strategies teachers are using. When do children start struggling with reading in grade 3? Is it at the beginning of the year? Is it towards the middle of the year? And then what are you're aiming to achieve in terms of your objective? You want to find a solution. You want to introduce another reading strategy for the teachers possibly to use. All right. Then the literature review. You will use sources relevant to your research problem, and you will conduct a comprehensive literature review. So you will start by going on the library site, you will research your topic. So it will be reading in the foundation phase. But you know that you are going to be writing about grade 3, reading and as a first additional language or maybe as a mother tongue. That is a very specific topic, but you will start it broad in terms of finding out about reading, and then you will narrow it down to find the literature pertaining your problem statement. As you are going to find different sources at the beginning, you will quickly find out who the authors are who are referred to all the time. And that is in what we would call the authoritative sources about this line of research. So read until you start seeing authors being repeated and references and topics that or titles that come up in your search. And then you, at some point, you will reach what we call saturation. That is when you start reading nothing new about your topic. So you will start picking up themes that are repeated, then you know that now you are getting to a point where you have read comprehensively about your literature. Now you will have to then start synthesizing the literature. So we don't expect you to simply copy and paste from the articles or the books that you have consulted. We want you to start putting themes together. And you synthesize the information, but you will quote or cite all the sources that you have found. You will make sure that all the concepts about your topic are clearly defined. And again, and that you will see that I repeat this, all your sources must be referenced. So if you consult certain sources, if you synthesize the information, you will cite all the sources, maybe 4 or 5 of them, because you are synthesizing the information, you are summarizing what they are all saying. If you are quoting a source, you will quote the source, the date and the page number. But if you are not referencing, you run the risk that your proposal may not be accepted. Then we move on to the research methodology and design. This is where you will explain your paradigm and your research approach. For example, your paradigm is interpretivist, and you are going to use a qualitative study. Your population, it's a primary school foundation phase, grade 3. Sampling, 3 grade 3 classes in 2 schools. You will explain how you are sampling. What methodology are you using in your sampling? How did you select the participants? Your data collection instruments. If it's a qualitative study, interviews, lesson observation, document analysis, for example. And then your data analysis. How are you going to analyze your data? Is it thematic? How are you going to get to the themes? How will you analyze the data? Then validity and reliability. You'll explain how you would ensure reliability and validity in the case, and reliability and validity in case of a quantitative research. You will explain how you ensure trustworthiness in qualitative research. You address how comprehensive your study will be, and Explain the reliability by focusing on the consistency of your methods and your findings. Transferability means that your findings may be transferred to other relevant contexts. And confirmability refers to the objectivity maintained in your study. Dependability means you can account for changes that took place during the study. So validity and reliability are all these things, but for some studies, certain aspects are more important than others because it depends on whether it's a qualitative study, quantitative study, or mixed method study. So go through this section very carefully in your study guide. And when you read other studies, read what they have written about validity and reliability. Your research ethics, this will, you will then, when you apply for register your study, you will be asked to apply for ethical clearance with the university. So you will fill in a form and you will see on that form what it requires. It means that certain permissions must be obtained. As you will be researching humans, you will always have to ask permission at different levels. At school, from the education department, from the school principal. Then you will ask permission from the teachers and also the learners. So it's a whole process. So research ethics are incredibly important. Not obtain permission to use the words from people that you have spoken to, the documents from the people you have seen, the observations from the people that you have watched. If they did not give you explicit written permission, your study will not be valid. So please make sure that you understand the importance of ethics and that it is a given. It's not something that you can think, is it, do I need to do it or not? You will need to have ethical clearance. And it is not a complex process, but it is a compulsory process to go through. So the possible limitations of your study is the next section in your proposal. So you will plan your study and you'll try to make sure that there are no possible limitations. In other words, that you didn't get, your sample is not big enough, that your participants are not representative. However, we also understand that while you may plan a study, things may not always work out as planned, but then you will explain that. So, for example, you wanted to interview 3 groups at a school, but when you finished with the first 2 groups, you couldn't interview the 3rd group because something happened. Maybe there was an unforeseen issue at the school and you couldn't interview all the members of the 3rd group. Then you will explain that and it will be a limitation. So always remember that when something happens, you in your study will explain so that the reader understands that this is part of the context, and then they will also want to see how did it affect your study, and you will explain that also. You will then give about 7 to 10 key concepts that are critical to your study so that the reader who may not be familiar with the context of your study will be able to understand your study. So by giving key concepts, you are making your study accessible to the reader. Then the chapter outline. There are usually 5 chapters, which are self-explanatory. The first one, you'll give the introduction and overview. The second chapter is your literature review, followed by chapter 3, the research design and data collection. Chapter 4, results and discussion. And chapter 5, conclusions, recommendations, and limitations of the study. And then your conclusion. You will write a brief conclusion that summarizes your proposal, the problem, the gap that you plan to address, your methodology, possible solutions to the problem. And then your reference list. For at this level, you should be able to list at least 15 references. So please understand a reference list is where you list the authors you have cited in your study. So if you cited Shepherd of 2019, Shepherd of 2019 must then be cited in your study. This list does not include the sources that you have read. This list is the sources that you are using in your study. You are referencing them in your study. Whether you reference them once or 12, multiple times, they will be in your reference list. So please check before you send in your proposal, double check. Make sure that all the authors that you are referencing in your study appear in your reference list. If they don't, or if somebody is not referenced, it will undermine the validity of your study. So this is a very serious exercise to make sure that you reference all the authors that you refer to in your study. It's very, very important that you look at examples of studies, because it will put your mind at ease if you're unclear about anything about a proposal. So consult the Unisa Repository where completed studies are stored. It will really, as I say, be to your benefit to read studies, and they will guide you in the development of your own study. So this is the link to the Unisa Repository, where you will find links to the departments and the education department, and you will see there is a link for the Department of Language Education, Arts and Culture, where you will then be able to see examples of studies about language. And this is what the page will look like. It is the Unisa Institutional Repository, and you will be able to browse it by authors or titles or subjects. Again, I strongly urge you to look at examples, because it will be a very good guide for you and your writing of your proposal. So thank you very much. I hope this presentation has been of benefit to you. And remember, a researcher is inquisitive and interested in finding information, reading it critically and solving problems in a meaningful way. Good luck on your journey. I hope you will enjoy it. Thank you.